There are lost treasures that haunt history, hoards of gold, jewels, and artifacts whispered about in legends but never found. And then there's the greatest mystery of them all, the vanished fortune of the Knights Templar. Picture this, a warrior monk order so powerful, they amassed unimaginable wealth, influenced kings, and built a financial empire stretching across medieval Europe, only to vanish overnight, leaving behind whispers of hidden vaults, cryptic maps, and a treasure so vast it could rewrite history. This isn't just some dusty old tale, it's a real-life puzzle that's inspired everything from blockbuster movies like National Treasure to wild conspiracy theories about secret societies. But what if the truth is even stranger than fiction? Imagine a treasure so sought after it's been hunted for over 700 years. The Templars weren't just knights, they were bankers, spies, and guardians of secrets. Their sudden fall in the 14th century wasn't just a historical event, it was a disappearing act worthy of a heist movie. One day, they were the most powerful organization in Christendom. The next, their leaders were arrested, their land seized, and their legendary fortune gone without a trace. Some say it was smuggled away under the cover of darkness. Others believe it's still hidden, waiting for someone to crack the code. And the clues, they're everywhere, carved into ancient chapels, buried in cryptic manuscripts, even woven into the geometry of forgotten ruins. So what really happened to the Templars' treasure? Was it destroyed, stolen, or hidden in plain sight? And why, after centuries, does this mystery still captivate us? Maybe it's the thrill of the hunt, the idea that somewhere out there, a fortune untouched by time still lies waiting. Or maybe it's something deeper, a story of power, betrayal, and the enduring allure of the unknown. Whatever the reason, one thing's for sure, this isn't just a story about gold. It's a story about secrets, the kind that refuse to stay buried. And by the end of this journey, you might just see history and those shadowy knights in a whole new light. In the year 1119, a small band of knights made an oath that would change history. They called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, later known as the Knights Templar. Born in the chaos of the Crusades, their mission seemed simple at first: protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem, a city torn by war and bandits. But these weren't just ordinary warriors. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, living like monks while fighting like elite soldiers. A paradoxical blend of devotion and steel. They wore white mantles emblazoned with the Red Cross, a symbol that would soon strike fear and awe across the medieval world. Their rise was nothing short of meteoric. Within decades, they transformed from a ragtag group of 9 knights into a powerhouse with castles, fleets, and influence rivaling kings. How? Their genius wasn't just in warfare, it was in finance. Pilgrims needed a way to travel safely without carrying fortunes vulnerable to thieves, so the Templars invented an early form of banking. A merchant could deposit gold in Paris and withdraw it in Jerusalem using handwritten letters of credit, a system so revolutionary, it laid the groundwork for modern finance. Kings and nobles trusted them with their wealth, making the order unimaginably rich. But here's the twist: their official vow of poverty meant they couldn't personally own anything. Every coin, every acre of land, every artifact they acquired belonged to the order itself. This created a vast, centralized treasury, one that would later vanish without a trace. And their hybrid identity as warrior monks gave them unparalleled discipline. They answered only to the Pope, operating outside the control of any king. That independence would eventually make them dangerous, because when you amass that much power, wealth, and secrecy in the shadows of medieval Europe, you don't just make allies, you make enemies. The Templars didn't just accumulate wealth, they reinvented it. While other medieval orders relied on tithes and feudal rents, these warrior monks built a financial network so advanced it would make modern bankers nod in respect. Their empire stretched from the rocky coast of Portugal to the markets of the Holy Land, and at its heart was a system of trust and convenience no one had ever seen before. Picture a European merchant planning a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Carrying gold meant risking bandits, shipwrecks, or greedy local lords, but the Templars offered a solution. Deposit your coins at one of their commanderies, receive a coded letter of credit, and redeem it at any Templar outpost along your journey. No bulky chests of silver, no bribes to highwaymen, just a slip of parchment guarded by the most feared warriors of the age. This wasn't just a service, it was a revolution. The Templars didn't just store wealth, they made it move. Pilgrims paid fees for the privilege, kings borrowed against future tax revenues, and even rival nobles stashed their fortunes in Templar vaults, knowing their treasure would be safer with these monk knights than in their own castles. The Order's reputation for incorruptibility was legendary. Breaking their vow of poverty didn't just mean expulsion, it meant eternal shame. So when a Templar scribe recorded a deposit, you could bet your life it would be honored. But their financial genius went deeper, they diversified. Donations from pious nobles piled up, entire estates, vineyards, even rights to toll bridges. Instead of just collecting rent, the Templars turned these holdings into revenue machines. Their farms employed the latest agricultural techniques, their mills ground grain for profit, and their fleets transported goods as well as pilgrims. They even issued loans, charging interest discreetly through creative fees, a workaround since usury was forbidden by the church. Yet here's the fascinating twist: their wealth was both their strength and their curse. The same network that made them indispensable also made them targets. Kings drowning in debt eyed their coffers, rival orders bristled at their influence. And their secrecy, it bred rumors. Whispers spread that their vaults held not just gold but relics. The Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, documents that could shake the foundations of Christendom. Whether true or not, one thing was certain: by the 13th century, the Templars weren't just bankers or knights. They were the shadow keepers of the medieval world's most dangerous secret, money itself. And when power concentrates that dramatically, history teaches us it's only a matter of time before someone comes to take it. Friday the 13th, 1307, a date that would live in infamy, not just for superstition, but for the shocking betrayal that shattered the Knights Templar. Before dawn, agents of King Philip IV of France moved like shadows, arresting hundreds of Templars across the kingdom in a single, coordinated strike. The charges: heresy, blasphemy, even whispered accusations of devil worship. The truth, far more sinister. Philip, drowning in debt to the Order, saw an opportunity. If the Templars were destroyed, their wealth could fill his empty coffers, but what he didn't count on, their treasure would vanish into thin air. The arrests were brutal. Templar Grand Master Jacques de Molay and his brothers were dragged from their beds, tortured into wild confessions, and paraded as villains. Pope Clement V, pressured by Philip, eventually disbanded the order, but not before something extraordinary happened. Despite the king's men ransacking Templar strongholds, their legendary treasury was nowhere to be found. Vaults that should have held mountains of gold stood nearly empty. Had the Templars been warned, some believe secret networks spirited their fortune away in the dead of night, loaded onto wagons, slipped into the holds of ships, or hidden in remote commanderies beyond Philip's reach. The most tantalizing clue: the Templar fleet. Days before the arrests, ships vanished from the French port of La Rochelle. Where they went, no one knows. Legends speak of cargo holds filled with chests of gold, sacred relics, and documents so explosive they could rewrite history. Others claim the treasure was divided, buried in cryptic locations across Europe, guarded by codes only the initiated could decipher. Whatever the truth, one fact remains: Philip got his scapegoats but not the gold, and the last Grand Master's dying curse. As Jacques de Molay burned at the stake, he reportedly vowed Philip and Clement would meet him before God within a year. Both men died shortly after a chilling footnote to a mystery that refuses to die. The question isn't just where the treasure went, it's why, after centuries, we're still looking. Maybe it's the thrill of the unsolved, or maybe it's the lingering sense that the Templars, even in defeat, outsmarted everyone. Because if history teaches us one thing, it's this: the greatest treasures aren't just gold. They're secrets, and the Templars to this day seem determined to keep theirs. The legend of the lost Templar treasure begins with an enigma that has taunted historians and treasure hunters for centuries. When King Philip's men stormed Templar strongholds across France, they expected vaults overflowing with gold, jewels, and sacred relics. Instead, they found only scraps, an unsettling disconnect between the order's known wealth and the paltry sums recovered. Official records from the time even note the confusion, with one chronicler writing that the king's men searched with great diligence, yet found but a fraction of that which was owed. So where did it all go? One theory points to the Templars' legendary foresight. Some historians argue the order had spies within the French court, tipped off weeks before the arrests. If true, they would have had just enough time to move their wealth. Whispers speak of midnight caravans slipping through hidden tunnels beneath Paris, laden with chests bound for unknown destinations. Others believe the treasure was loaded onto ships at La Rochelle, the same vessels that mysteriously vanished days before the crackdown, but their destination remains hotly debated. Scotland is a prime suspect. The Templars had close ties to Scottish nobles, and some accounts suggest knights fled there under the protection of Robert the Bruce. Rosslyn Chapel, with its cryptic carvings and hidden chambers, has long fueled speculation of buried Templar gold beneath its floors. Then there's Portugal, where the order simply rebranded. King Denis, refusing to persecute the knights, allowed them to reform as the Order of Christ. Many believe they smuggled their treasure into Lisbon, funding Portugal's age of exploration. Some even claim Templar maps guided Vasco da Gama to uncharted lands. But the most tantalizing theory, an underground network stretching across Europe, abandoned commanderies, forgotten caves, and labyrinthine tunnels where the treasure was divided and hidden. The Rennes-le-Château mystery, with its coded parchments and rumors of buried riches, fits eerily well into this puzzle. What makes these theories so compelling isn't just the treasure itself, it's the Templars' genius for secrecy. They didn't just hide wealth, they embedded clues in architecture, encrypted manuscripts, and even the alignment of their churches. Some say the key lies in the geometry of Chartres Cathedral or the odd carvings at Toma in Portugal. Others insist the truth is tucked away in the Vatican's locked archives, but perhaps the real treasure was never gold at all. Maybe it was knowledge, a forbidden texts, ancient wisdom, or proof of a secret so explosive the Templars chose to vanish rather than reveal it. One thing's certain: every few years a new discovery reignites the hunt. A coded map surfaces in an attic. Ground-penetrating radar hints at voids beneath a medieval chapel. Each clue feels like a breadcrumb left by the knights themselves, daring us to follow. And that's the magic of this mystery. Whether the treasure was real or just a legend, the Templars ensured one thing: their story would never end. Because the greatest treasures aren't just found, they're chased. Standing in the heart of London, Temple Church feels like stepping into a living crypt, a silent witness to centuries of secrets. Built by the Knights Templar in the 12th century as their English headquarters, this circular sanctuary wasn't just a place of worship. It was a fortress of finance, a nexus of power, and, if legend holds, the hiding place of their most precious treasure. The church's very design whispers of hidden purpose. The iconic round nave, inspired by Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre, served a dual role. Above ground, knights took oaths of devotion. Below, rumors persist of a labyrinth of tunnels stretching all the way to the Thames, escape routes for gold, relics, or perhaps even fleeing Templars during their final hours. Walk the stone floors today and you're treading on riddles. medieval builders embedded cryptic symbols into the very fabric of the church. Look closely at the weathered effigies of armored knights lining the floor. Some lie with legs crossed markers, some claim of buried Templar wealth. Even the church's alignment holds clues. During certain solstices, sunlight strikes specific carvings with eerie precision, fueling theories of astronomical codes pointing to hidden chambers. And then there's the underground. Construction workers in the 1950s stumbled upon vaulted passageways sealed for centuries, their purpose never fully explained. Were these mere storage cellars or part of a grander network? The most compelling evidence might lie in something seemingly mundane: the Templars' obsession with security. Records show they engineered their properties with redundant defenses, false walls, decoy chambers, even acoustically designed rooms to muffle conversations. In a place like Temple Church, where they stored tithes and loans for England's crown, such features wouldn't just be practical, they'd be essential. Modern scans have detected anomalies beneath the church's chapter house voids that match the dimensions of Templar treasure vaults found in Cyprus and France. Yet no excavation has ever been permitted. What makes Temple Church unique isn't just its architecture, it's its paper trail. Unlike many Templar sites destroyed or repurposed after their fall, this one remained intact, its archives preserving tantalizing fragments. One 13th century ledger mentions a secret deposit moved to the church weeks before the French arrests. Another references a sealed tunnel for the Guardian's use only. Even Shakespeare allegedly knew the rumors. His play Henry VI hints at Templar gold buried near the Thames, with characters whispering of hoarded ingots beneath the Templars' domain. Could the truth still lie hidden in plain sight? Temple Church stands as a working parish today, its stones holding 700 years of silent testimony. Every scratch in the masonry, every weathered effigy might be part of a puzzle the Templars left behind, not just to conceal their treasure, but to ensure only the worthy could find it. After all, the greatest secrets aren't always buried. Sometimes they're waiting where everyone can see them, disguised as history. Nestled in the rugged hills of southern France, the tiny village of Rennes-le-Château might seem like just another sleepy medieval hamlet until you step inside its eerie little church. Here, in the late 19th century, a penniless parish priest named Béranger Saunière began spending money like a man possessed, renovations fit for a king. Lavish gardens, a mysterious tower he called Tour Magdala, built not for the village but seemingly for some private obsession. Where did a rural priest with a modest salary get such wealth? The answer might lie buried in the very stones of his church and in the shadows of the Templars. Saunière's story begins like a Gothic novel. Appointed to the crumbling church of St. Mary Magdalene in 1885, he started simple repairs until workers lifting the altar stone discovered something shocking. Some say it was a hollow pillar filled with ancient parchments. Others whisper of a crypt beneath the church, its walls lined with skeletons and chests of gold. Whatever Saunière found, his life changed overnight. Suddenly, he was traveling to Paris, consulting with experts in obscure codes, and receiving mysterious visitors under cover of darkness. Local merchants later reported his payments in antique gold coins. Theories spiral from there. One persistent legend claims Saunière uncovered Templar documents, perhaps even proof of a bloodline linking Christ to medieval European royalty, a secret so explosive it could topple kingdoms. Others believe he found Templar gold hidden centuries earlier when the Order's last knights fled France. The church renovations fuel speculation. Saunière installed a devilish statue above the entrance, carved the cryptic phrase, "Terribilis est locus ist," "This place is terrible," into the archway, and arranged the stations of the cross in bizarre, non-standard order. Were these clues, or the frantic gestures of a man who'd stumbled onto something he barely understood? The village itself adds layers to the puzzle. Rennes-le-Château sits atop ruins dating back to Visigothic times, a civilization that sacked Rome and supposedly looted Solomon's temple treasures. Beneath the church, tunnels snake into the mountains, some sealed shut by authorities without explanation. Even the landscape seems to hide messages. From Saunier's tower, certain alignments point to other mysterious sites. The fortress of Montségur, last stronghold of the Cathars, or the ruins of Templar commanderies. Coincidence or a map in plain sight? Modern investigations only deepen the intrigue. When Saunier died in 1917, his housekeeper, Marie Denonord, allegedly promised her lawyer she'd reveal a secret that would make him rich and possibly change the history of France. She never got the chance. A stroke left her paralyzed before she could speak. Decades later, renovators found hollow spaces beneath the church floor, their contents long since removed. And in the 1960s, a local boy stumbled upon a glass vial hidden in a baluster inside, a rolled parchment torn in half, its text never deciphered. What makes Rennes-le-Château unique isn't just the treasure hunt. It's the uncanny way Saunier's story mirrors the Templars' own demise, a sudden rush of wealth followed by secrecy and finally silence. Whether he found gold, heresy, or simply played a brilliant con game, one thing's certain: the ghosts of the Templars haunt this place, because if their treasure was ever real, and if it survived Philip IV's purge, a lonely hillside in France is exactly where you'd hide it, in plain sight, guarded by riddles that outlast the men who made them. Off the foggy coast of Nova Scotia lies a place where history and mystery collide: Oak Island, home to one of the world's most infamous treasure hunts. For over 200 years, explorers have risked fortunes and even lives trying to crack the island's central enigma, the Money Pit, a shaft dug deep into the earth, lined with layers of logs, coconut fiber, and booby traps so elaborate they wouldn't be out of place in an Indiana Jones film. But what if this isn't just a pirate stash or colonial hoard? What if the real architects of the Money Pit were the Knights Templar themselves? The clues start with the 90-foot stone, a slab pulled from the pit in the early 1800s. Etched with cryptic symbols, some believe it held a coded message. Translations range from the dramatic 40 feet below, £2 million lie buried, to theories linking it to Templar ciphers. Then there's the pit's design: flood tunnels perfectly engineered to fill the shaft with seawater if disturbed, suggest a level of sophistication far beyond what random pirates could muster. But medieval military engineers, that's another story. The Templars, after all, built some of the most advanced fortifications of their age. The historical timing adds fuel to the fire. After the Order's suppression in 1307, rumors swirled that surviving knights fled with their treasure across the Atlantic. Some point to Henry Sinclair, a Scottish noble with Templar ties, who allegedly sailed to Nova Scotia in the late 14th century, nearly a century before Columbus. Local Micmac legends even speak of men in robes arriving long before European settlers, building strange stone structures. Could Sinclair's crew have been Templar refugees, burying their fortune in a labyrinth designed to outlast empires? Then there's the physical evidence. Oak Island's swamp contains traces of mercury, a metal the Templars reportedly used in alchemical experiments. Artifacts like a medieval-style lead cross and bits of parchment have surfaced over the years. Even the island's strange tree markings resembling Templar symbols hint at a deeper connection. Skeptics argue it's all coincidence, but the sheer volume of anomalies is hard to ignore. What makes Oak Island unique isn't just the treasure hunt. It's the lingering sense that we're dealing with more than gold. If the Templars did build this, they didn't just want to hide wealth. They wanted to protect something, whether sacred relics, forbidden knowledge, or proof of a history we've yet to uncover. The Money Pit isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a time capsule from one of history's most secretive brotherhoods, daring us to dig deeper. Rosslyn Chapel stands like a frozen whisper in the Scottish lowlands, its stone walls alive with carvings so intricate they seem to pulse with hidden meaning. Built in the 15th century by William Sinclair, a nobleman with murky ties to the fallen Templars, this chapel isn't just a place of worship, it's a cipher in sandstone. Step inside and the air hums with unanswered questions. Why would a remote Scottish chapel feature carvings of maize and aloe vera plants unknown in Europe until after Columbus's voyages? Why do its pillars twist with patterns eerily similar to those in Jerusalem's Temple Mount? And most haunting of all, why does every inch of this place feel like a map to something lost? The Sinclair connection fuels the fire. William's ancestor, Henry Sinclair, is the same man some believe led Templar survivors to Nova Scotia after the Order's fall. The family crest even bears a strange engraving, an arm clutching a heart, mirroring the Templar symbol for sacred knowledge, but it's the chapel's apprentice pillar that steals the show. Legend claims the master mason left to study the original design abroad, only to return and find his apprentice had completed the pillar alone with such perfection. The master flew into a rage and killed him on the spot. The pillar's spiraling vines hide deeper secrets. X-rays reveal metallic densities within, sparking theories of hollow chambers or even embedded relics. Some researchers argue the patterns match Templar initiation rites, encoding gestures and passwords known only to the Brotherhood. Then there's the ceiling. Hundreds of carved cubes, each bearing unique symbols, mathematical equations, musical notations, even astrological alignments. One sequence, when translated into musical notes, produces a haunting melody some call the Rosslyn motet. Coincidence or a clue left by builders who saw knowledge as sacred? The chapel's orientation adds another layer. Unlike most Christian churches, it's aligned not to sunrise on Easter, but to a specific star in the constellation Draco, a nod, some say, to ancient astronomical traditions the Templars may have preserved. Modern technology only deepens the riddle. Ground-penetrating radar has detected anomalies beneath the chapel voids that echo the dimensions of Templar treasure vaults found in Cyprus. Yet despite repeated requests, no full excavation has been permitted. The most tantalizing hint might lie outside the chapel walls. A nearby stone marker, weathered by centuries, points toward a hillside where locals whisper of a sealed tunnel. In the 1980s, a landslide exposed part of its entrance, a doorway carved with the same symbols found inside the chapel. It was quickly reburied by authorities, leaving questions hanging in the mist. What makes Rosslyn unique isn't just its carvings or legends, it's the chilling possibility that we're not just looking at art, but at a living puzzle. Every groove in the stone, every hidden chamber, feels like a challenge from the past. Solve me if you can. Whether the chapel guards Templar gold, sacred texts, or simply the ghost of a lost apprentice, one thing's certain: its builders wanted us to keep looking. Because the greatest treasures aren't always the ones you find. They're the ones that never let you stop searching. In the tangled web of Templar myths, few stories have captured modern imaginations like the Priory of Sion, a supposed secret society guarding the bloodline of Christ. The tale exploded into pop culture with the 1982 book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which wove Templar history, shadowy dynasties, and coded documents into a thriller worthy of a Dan Brown novel. But here's the twist: the entire foundation of the Priory of Sion was an elaborate hoax, one that hijacked the Templars' legacy for a 20th century con. So how did a fabricated secret society become entangled with real medieval knights? The story begins in the 1950s when a Frenchman named Pierre Plantard filed papers registering the Priory of Sion as a quaint social club. By the 60s, he'd transformed it into something far grander, claiming it was a 1,000-year-old order descended from the Templars, tasked with protecting Merovingian kings who were supposedly the bloodline of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. To prove this, Plantard and his associates planted forged documents in France's National Library, including the infamous dossier secrets papers linking Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, and other luminaries to the priory. The scheme might have stayed obscure if not for Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which treated the forgeries as genuine history, blending them with real Templar lore until the lines blurred beyond recognition. What makes this hoax so insidious isn't just the fabrication, it's how it distorted actual Templar history. The real knights never guarded a Christ bloodline. Their power came from banking and military prowess, not ancient dynastic secrets. Yet the myth persists, partly because it taps into something deeper, our love of hidden truths. The idea that history's greatest mysteries might be controlled by a shadowy cabal is intoxicating. It's also a disservice to the real Templars, whose genuine innovations like inventing modern banking get overshadowed by fictional conspiracies. Modern scholars have thoroughly debunked the priory. Plantard admitted under oath in the 90s that he'd fabricated the entire story. Yet the legend lingers, proof that a well-spun tale can eclipse fact. The irony, the Templars themselves were masters of secrecy, but their true legacy isn't in Grail quests or bloodlines, it's in the tangible ways they shaped the world. Perhaps the real lesson here isn't about hidden treasure, but about why we're so eager to believe it exists. After all, the greatest mysteries aren't always the ones buried in history. Sometimes they're the stories we choose to tell about it. On the night of October 12, 1307, under a moonless sky, something extraordinary happened at the French port of La Rochelle. 18 Templar ships, some of the most advanced vessels of their time, vanished without a trace. No records of their cargo, no final destinations logged. Just empty docks where a formidable naval force had once been anchored. This wasn't just a fleet disappearing, it was the escape of an entire financial and military network, slipping through the fingers of a king who had already signed their death warrants. The timing couldn't have been more suspicious. Mere days before King Philip's mass arrests, these ships weighed anchor under cover of darkness. Witnesses later spoke of unmarked wagons arriving at the docks in the dead of night, their contents loaded swiftly under torchlight. But where did they go? One persistent theory points west, far west. Could the Templars have crossed the Atlantic decades before Columbus? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it seems. Templar sailors had access to navigational knowledge gleaned from Arab and Viking sources, and their ports in Portugal were hubs for exploratory ventures. Some historians point to the Newport Tower in Rhode Island, a stone structure with uncanny similarities to Templar chapels in Europe. Others cite the Westford Knight, a mysterious rock carving in Massachusetts depicting what appears to be a 14th-century European soldier. But the Mediterranean holds equally compelling clues. Rumors persist of a hidden Templar base on the tiny island of Ponza off Italy's coast, a strategic waypoint where the fleet could have regrouped. Malta's Grand Harbor, later home to the Templars' successor order, the Knights Hospitaller, has underwater caves large enough to shelter ships. Even the rugged coastline of Dalmatia, dotted with abandoned medieval fortresses, fits the profile of a shadowy refuge. The truth might lie in logistics. Templar ships were built for speed and stealth, with shallow drafts perfect for slipping into hidden coves. Their crews, bound by vows of silence, could have maintained secrecy for generations. What makes the fleet's disappearance so tantalizing isn't just the mystery, it's the paper trail left behind. Crumbling ledgers from La Rochelle's customs house list odd final shipments, barrels of mercury for medicinal purposes, a metal the Templars used in alchemy, crates of ecclesiastical furnishings too heavy for simple altar pieces, and most telling, a payment receipt for unregistered tonnage. The latter suggests cargo never meant to be declared. Modern sonar scans off the French coast have revealed wreckage matching Templar ship designs, but none match the missing fleet size. Either they sank in deep water or they reached their destination. The most chilling possibility, the fleet wasn't just carrying treasure, it carried people. Surviving Templar knights, their families, and perhaps even refugees from the Order's vast network of allies. If so, their legacy didn't die in Philip's dungeons. It simply went underground, resurfacing centuries later in the rituals of maritime guilds, the symbols of early Masonic lodges, and the whispers of exiled noble houses. The ships may be dust now, but their voyage never truly ended. It just became part of history's shadow, a secret written in waves, not ink. Today, Switzerland is synonymous with discreet banking and impenetrable financial privacy, a reputation that might sound strangely familiar to students of Templar history. The parallels between the medieval knights' financial innovations and modern Swiss banking aren't just coincidental, they're the stuff of legend. Long before numbered accounts and vaults carved into alpine mountains, the Templars perfected the art of safeguarding wealth with an almost religious devotion to secrecy. But could there be a direct line connecting these 700-year-old monk bankers to the gnomes of Zurich? The theory hinges on a tantalizing historical thread. After the Templars' downfall in the 14th century, surviving knights allegedly fled to remote regions beyond the reach of vengeful kings. Some records suggest a contingent escaped to the Swiss Alps, where the rugged terrain and fiercely independent cantons offered sanctuary. Switzerland at the time was a patchwork of territories lacking centralized authority, the perfect place to disappear. What's more, the Swiss were already renowned mercenaries, valuing loyalty and silence above all. A perfect match for Templar survivors skilled in both combat and finance. Supporters of this idea point to the sudden emergence of Switzerland as a financial hub in the centuries that followed. By the 1500s, Geneva had become a haven for persecuted groups, Protestants, Huguenots, and, significantly, exiled knights from disbanded orders, all of whom needed secure ways to move and protect their wealth. The Swiss Guards' origins add another layer. Founded in 1506 as the Pope's personal protectors, their white-crossed uniforms and strict codes of conduct bear an uncanny resemblance to the Templars' own traditions. Could this have been a deliberate echo, a way to preserve Templar ideals under a new name? Then there's the architecture. Visit the medieval town of Sion in the Valais canton, and you'll find a chapel dedicated to Saint Bernard, the Templars' patron saint, adorned with symbols eerily similar to those found in Templar commanderies. Nearby, the ruins of Tourbillon Castle feature underground chambers that local law claims once held treasure too heavy for kings to lift. Even Switzerland's famed banking laws, which prioritize client confidentiality above all else, seem to mirror the Templars' unbreakable vow to protect depositors' identities, a radical concept in an age when rulers routinely seized assets on a whim. Of course, skeptics argue this is all circumstantial. Switzerland's banking prominence could simply be a product of geography and politics, not hidden Templar influence. But the timing is provocative. The country's first major financial reforms coincided with the arrival of exiled knights from France and Germany, many of whom came from families with documented Templar ties. And consider this, the Swiss franc's earliest versions featured symbols, a cross and a shield, that wouldn't have looked out of place on a Templar seal. Whether myth or reality, the connection endures because it speaks to something deeper than just money. It's about the power of secrecy, the allure of institutions that operate outside the rules. The Templars didn't just invent banking, they invented the idea that wealth could be both invisible and untouchable. And if even a fraction of their knowledge survived in Swiss vaults, it would explain why, to this day, the world's most powerful people trust their fortunes to a small country in the Alps, just as medieval kings once trusted theirs to a brotherhood of warrior monks. Some legacies aren't written in ledgers, they're coded into the stones of history, waiting for those who know where to look. The red cross blazing against a white mantle wasn't just the Templars' uniform, it was a statement. To medieval Europe, this symbol screamed sacred authority, but to the knights themselves, it may have been a cipher, part of an intricate visual language designed to guard their deepest secrets. Their symbols weren't just decoration, they were a survival mechanism. Take the famous double-headed eagle found carved into Templar chapels from Portugal to Jerusalem. At first glance, it's a heraldic motif, but dig deeper. In esoteric traditions, the twin heads represent duality, earth and heaven, matter and spirit. Some researchers believe it secretly pointed to the order's dual nature as both warriors and bankers, or even signaled their alleged guardianship of sacred relics from both Jewish and Christian traditions. Then there's the architecture. Templar commanderies weren't randomly designed. Their churches often featured octagonal layouts, mirroring Jerusalem's Dome of the Rock, a structure the Knights knew intimately. The number 8 held special significance, representing resurrection and new beginnings in medieval numerology, but it's the smaller details that tantalize. Look closely at the ceiling bosses in Temple Church, London, and you'll find floral patterns concealing Hebrew letters. In Tama, Portugal, the Charola's walls bear carvings of snakes swallowing their tails, an ancient Ouroboros symbol implying eternal cycles. Were these just artistic flourishes or breadcrumbs left for initiates? The most notorious cipher is the Dal de Kalmasawad, a stone slab allegedly discovered near Rennes-le-Château in the 19th century. Etched with a grid of seemingly random letters, it's been called the Templar Rosetta Stone. Cryptographers have spent decades trying to crack its code. One theory suggests it's a polyalphabetic cipher, a technique the Templars may have learned from Arab cryptographers during the Crusades. Apply the right shift to each letter, and some claim it reveals coordinates pointing to hidden treasure sites across Languedoc. Skeptics argue it's a modern forgery, but the stone's disappearance in the 1960s only fuels the mystery. Even their financial records held hidden layers. Templar account books used a unique numerical system with Greek and Hebrew characters mixed into Latin numerals. A code within a code. Some entries appear to be simple inventories until you notice odd repetitions. Certain numbers always appearing in groups, or sums that don't quite add up unless you account for missing variables. Historians now suspect these errors were intentional, masking transactions too sensitive to record plainly. The genius of Templar symbolism lies in its adaptability. A cross could be both a devotional emblem and a map marker. A rose carved above a doorway might signify spiritual purity or the location of a hidden vault. Perhaps that's why their icons endure. They weren't just signs, they were living puzzles daring us to look closer, because the greatest secrets aren't always buried in the ground. Sometimes they're hiding in the light. For centuries, the Templars' downfall was framed as divine justice, a corrupt order finally exposed for heresy and blasphemy. But in 2001, a bombshell discovery in the Vatican's secret archives turned that narrative on its head. The Chinon Parchment, a faded piece of medieval vellum, contained a stunning revelation. In 1308, Pope Clement V had secretly absolved the Templars of all heresy charges. Not just pardoned them, declared them innocent. This wasn't some hushed compromise, it was a full exoneration buried for 700 years. So why did Philip IV of France burn Templar leaders at the stake anyway? The answer might rewrite everything we thought we knew about history's most infamous cash grab. The parchment's contents read like a medieval legal thriller. After months of torture, Grand Master Jacques de Molay and his knights were brought before papal investigators at Chinon Castle. There, behind closed doors, they received private absolution, their confessions extracted under agony dismissed as lies. Clement even restored their right to receive sacraments, a privilege denied to genuine heretics. But here's the twist: the Pope never made this verdict public. Instead, he dissolved the order quietly in 1312, letting Philip seize their lands while pretending justice had been served. The parchment's discovery proves what many historians suspected: the heresy trial was always a sham. The real crime wasn't blasphemy, it was insolvency. Philip's motive becomes crystal clear when you follow the money. By 1307, France's treasury was bleeding gold. Years of war with England and Flanders had left the crown bankrupt, and Philip owed the Templars a staggering sum. Modern estimates suggest over 1 million livres, enough to bankrupt the kingdom twice over. When the knights demanded repayment, records show Philip resorted to desperate measures, melting down the royal silverware, even debasing currency. But the Templars, their coffers were legendary. The Paris Temple alone functioned as Europe's central bank, holding crowns, jewels, and promissory notes from half the nobility on the continent. Seizing their assets wouldn't just settle Philip's debts, it would make him the richest monarch in Christendom. The Chinon Parchment exposes the ultimate irony. The Templars were destroyed not for their sins, but for their power. Their real heresy wasn't spitting on the cross, it was creating a financial system so robust it threatened kings. Think about it, an organization with its own army, answerable only to the Pope, controlling the flow of money across borders. That's not just wealth, it's sovereignty. Philip didn't just want their gold, he needed to dismantle the machine that made them untouchable. What makes this discovery so explosive isn't just the rewriting of history, it's the questions it leaves hanging. If the Templars were innocent, why did Clement betray them? Some argue he was blackmailed. Philip had earlier engineered a papal schism to get his own puppet elected. Others believe the Pope feared Templar knowledge rumors they discovered something explosive in Jerusalem's ruins. But the darkest theory, Clement knew the truth but sacrificed the knights to prevent a greater disaster, open war between the Church and France's crown. The parchment's survival is its own mystery. Hidden in a mislabeled box for centuries, it only resurfaced when scholar Barbara Frail stumbled upon it while researching unrelated Inquisition records. That it endured at all is miraculous. Medieval popes routinely destroyed sensitive documents. Maybe it was deliberate. Maybe someone wanted the truth to surface when the world was ready to hear it. Because the real treasure of the Templars wasn't their gold. It was their legacy, a warning about what happens when power fears the keepers of its purse. And 700 years later, that lesson still burns as bright as de Mauley's funeral pyre. North America's coastline hides whispers of a history we're only beginning to unravel, one where medieval knights may have walked these shores long before Columbus. Take the Newport Tower in Rhode Island, a mysterious stone structure rising like a sentinel over the Atlantic. At first glance, it could pass for a colonial windmill, but the details don't add up. Its 8 arches mirror Templar churches across Europe, and its mortar contains a shell mix not used by later settlers. Carbon dating places its construction somewhere between the 14th and 15th centuries before the Pilgrims arrived. Could this be the work of Templar refugees, building a stronghold far from the reach of vengeful kings? Then there's the Westford Knight, a weathered slab of rock in Massachusetts, etched with what appears to be the outline of a medieval sword and a shield bearing the heraldic markings of the Sinclair clan, a family with deep Templar ties. Local lore claims it's a memorial to a fallen knight who died on an expedition inland. Skeptics dismiss it as glacial scratches, but the precision of the carvings tells another story. The sword's pommel matches 14th century designs, and the shield's insignia aligns perfectly with the Sinclair crest from the same era. Even stranger, similar carvings have been found along Nova Scotia's coast, all pointing toward Oak Island, ground zero for Templar treasure theories. But the most compelling evidence might lie beneath the waves. Off the coast of Maine, divers have uncovered what appear to be medieval mooring stones, massive rocks with drilled holes used to anchor ships. Their placement suggests a harbor, yet they predate known European settlements by centuries. Nearby, a handful of metal artifacts have turned up, including a corroded coin identified as a 14th century Venetian soldino. How did it get there? One theory points to Henry Sinclair, the Scottish earl rumored to have led a Templar expedition to the New World in the late 1300s. Icelandic sagas mention a voyage he undertook to a land called Estatiland, possibly Nova Scotia or New England, with a crew of Templar survivors and their cargo. The puzzle deepens when you consider the Native American accounts. The Micmac people of Nova Scotia have oral traditions of men in robes arriving in large boats long before other Europeans. These visitors traded metal tools, wore strange garments, and carried symbols resembling Templar crosses. Even their burial sites tell a story. Some Micmac graves contain iron artifacts of unknown origin, with metallurgical analysis suggesting European craftsmanship from the late medieval period. What ties these fragments together? A map, the infamous Zeno map, published in 1558 but allegedly based on earlier voyages, shows detailed coastlines of North America with place names matching Micmac words. Its accuracy is uncanny for the time, leading some to believe it was copied from Templar charts, knowledge possibly gleaned from their time in the Middle East, where Arab geographers had preserved ancient maritime routes. If the Templars did reach these shores, they weren't just fleeing persecution. They were following a blueprint, perhaps one etched in stolen scrolls from Constantinople or Jerusalem's lost libraries. The question isn't just whether the Templars came to America, it's why. Were they hiding treasure too vast to leave in Europe, burying relics too dangerous to keep near prying eyes, or simply seeking a new beginning where their order could rise again, free from the shadows of kings and popes? Every stone, every carving, every rusted artifact feels like a breadcrumb left behind, not just to mark a trail, but to prove they were here. And if that's true, then somewhere beneath these forests or off these rocky coasts, their greatest secret might still be waiting. Among the tangled threads of Templar lore, few documents have sparked as much debate as the Laminius Charter, a parchment supposedly written in 1324 by a shadowy figure named Johannes Marcus Laminius. Purporting to transfer leadership of the Templars after Jacques de Molay's execution, the Charter lists a secret line of Grand Masters stretching into modern times. Organizations like the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, or SMOJ, cite it as proof of their legitimacy, even using it to bolster claims about hidden Templar wealth. But is this medieval manuscript the smoking gun of a surviving order, or one of history's most elaborate hoaxes? The Charter first surfaced in the early 18th century, when a French physician named Philippe Fabre-Palaprat claimed to have inherited it from a clandestine Templar network. Written in a cipher mixing Latin and Greek, it names Laminius, a man absent from all contemporary records, as de Molay's chosen successor. Each subsequent Grand Master's signature appears in a different handwriting, suggesting a lineage spanning centuries. Yet the document's authenticity crumbles under scrutiny. The Latin contains 18th century phrasing, not medieval. The cipher resembles codes popular in Fabre-Palaprat's era, not the Templars. Most damning, carbon dating places the parchment's creation squarely in the 1700s, not the 14th century. Why would someone fabricate such a detailed relic? Follow the money and the ego. Fabre-Palaprat wasn't just a doctor, he was a charismatic opportunist who refounded his own Templar order amid Napoleon's rise. The Charter gave his group instant legitimacy, attracting wealthy patrons eager to buy into the mystique. Modern groups like SMOJ, while distancing themselves from Fabre-Palaprat, still lean on the Charter's implied continuity. Their argument, even if the parchment itself is fake, it might encode genuine oral traditions passed down through underground Templar circles. The treasure claims tied to the Charter are even more audacious. Some factions insist the document contains coded directions to lost Templar vaults, pointing to locations in France's Languedoc region or beneath Scottish chapels. They highlight odd flourishes in the text, repeated sequences of numbers, or the odd insertion of the word Jerusalem where it doesn't grammatically fit as hidden clues. Mainstream historians dismiss this as wishful thinking. The numbers align with Masonic symbolism popular in Fabre-Palaprat's time, not Templar numerology. And the secret Grand Masters, listed after the 15th century, include known fraudsters and aristocrats with no ties to medieval knights. What makes the Laminius Charter fascinating isn't its legitimacy, but its endurance as a mirror of our obsession with hidden histories. Whether forged or not, it reveals how easily the Templar myth can be weaponized. A clever fake from the 1700s still shapes modern treasure hunts, proving that the Order's real power wasn't in gold but in symbolism. After all, the greatest treasures aren't always the ones we dig up, they're the stories we refuse to let die. The moment the Knights Templar set foot in Jerusalem, they weren't just warriors, they became archaeologists of the divine. While most crusaders sought conquest, these monk knights dug. Beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple, they reportedly uncovered something that would redefine their entire order, not just gold, but relics of biblical proportions. Among the most tantalizing claims, that their vaults once held the Ark of the Covenant itself, the gilded chest said to contain the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, whose very touch could strike men dead. This isn't just wild speculation. Medieval chroniclers like William of Tyre documented how the Templars turned the Temple Mount into their headquarters, conducting secret excavations for nearly a decade. What they allegedly found there would explain their meteoric rise. The Ark wasn't just a religious artifact, it was a political earthquake. In an era where faith and power were inseparable, controlling such an object would make the Templars untouchable, guardians of a sacred legitimacy even kings couldn't challenge. But the Ark wasn't the only prize whispered about in Templar lore. Some accounts suggest they recovered fragments of the true cross, the crown of thorns, even the Holy Grail, though the Grail's description shifts from a chalice to a stone, a book, or something far stranger. These weren't just treasures, they were bargaining chips with heaven itself. Imagine the leverage. When the Templars began issuing loans to bankrupt monarchs, were they backing those debts with something more tangible than promissory notes? A king might default on gold, but would he risk divine wrath by seizing the very relics that guaranteed his salvation? The link between relics and wealth runs deeper than symbolism. In medieval Europe, sacred objects weren't just venerated, they were economic engines. Pilgrims flocked to churches that housed saintly bones, pouring donations into collection boxes. The Templars, with their rumored collection of unparalleled relics, could have attracted a constant stream of pilgrims and their offerings, but there's a darker twist. Some historians argue the Order's infamous secrecy wasn't just about protecting treasure. It was about concealing the fact that certain relics might not be what they seemed. The Shroud of Turin, later associated with Templar descendants, bears striking similarities to ancient Mandylion images the knights could have encountered in Constantinople. Did they rediscover lost relics through clever forgery, creating sacred capital out of thin air? The most compelling evidence might lie in their architecture. At Chartres Cathedral, funded by Templar money, the labyrinthine floor pattern mirrors descriptions of Solomon's temple and the Ark's resting place. In Toma, Portugal, their chapel's orientation aligns with celestial events linked to Jewish holy days. These aren't random choices, they're breadcrumbs hinting at a deeper custodianship. Yet the question remains, if the Templars had these relics, where did they go? Some believe the Ark was smuggled to Ethiopia, echoing legends of Menelik stealing it centuries earlier. Others insist it's still hidden beneath Rosslyn Chapel's vaults, sealed behind stonework covered in maize carvings, a plant unknown in medieval Scotland but depicted in Ethiopian churches. The truth may be simpler. Perhaps the relics were never physical objects at all, but symbols of a different kind of treasure knowledge smuggled out of Jerusalem's ruins, fragments of ancient wisdom potent enough to unsettle empires. Because in the end, the most dangerous relics aren't those that gleam. They're the ones that make you see the world differently. While most of Europe turned against the Templars after their suppression, one kingdom refused to abandon them: Portugal. Here, the knights didn't just survive, they evolved. In 1319, King Denis I struck a brilliant deal with the Pope. Instead of disbanding the order, he simply rebranded them as the Order of Christ. Same knights, same lands, same treasure, just a new name stitched onto their cloaks. This wasn't charity. Portugal needed their expertise. The country stood on the edge of the known world, its rulers dreaming of sailing beyond the horizon. Who better to fund such madness than the medieval world's most daring banker warriors? The Templars turned Christ Knights didn't just bankroll Portugal's age of discovery, they helped invent it. Their coastal stronghold at Toma became a nerve center of exploration, its vaults overflowing with nautical charts smuggled from Alexandria and Antioch. Some say Prince Henry the Navigator, the mastermind behind Portugal's seafaring empire, was initiated into the Order's inner circle. The evidence is carved in stone at Toma's chapter house, where maritime motifs mingle with Templar crosses, an unlikely fusion of monkish piety and cutting-edge navigation. But where did the money come from? Legends whisper that a portion of the lost Templar treasury made its way to Portugal before the arrests. The timing fits. In the months before the crackdown, Templar ships were spotted unloading unmarked cargo at Lisbon's docks. Some historians believe these were emergency transfers, moving wealth to the one kingdom where knights could still operate openly. If true, it would explain how tiny Portugal suddenly bankrolled expeditions that reshaped the globe. Vasco da Gama's voyage to India in 1497. Funded by the Order of Christ, Bartholomew Dias rounding the Cape of Good Hope, their gold paid for those sails. Even the caravels themselves bore the Order's red cross on their sails, a silent nod to the warrior monks who made global trade routes possible. The most tantalizing clue lies in the explorer's behavior. Da Gama didn't just seek spices, he carried secret instructions to search for certain ancient relics in India. Later Portuguese ships scoured Ethiopia not for trade, but for rumored underground churches, the same region where some believe the Templars hid the Ark of the Covenant. Coincidence, or the lingering influence of knights who never truly abandoned their old quests? What makes the Portuguese chapter so compelling isn't just the survival of Templar wealth, it's how they transformed it. These weren't fugitives hoarding gold in caves. They were visionaries who turned medieval treasure into Renaissance progress, proving that the real power of their legacy wasn't in what they buried, but in what they built. And perhaps that's the ultimate twist in their story. History's most notorious lost treasure never vanished at all. It simply set sail. Beneath the cobbled streets of medieval Europe lies a shadowy labyrinth tunnel so vast they could hide an empire's ransom. From the Dôme prison in France's Dordogne region to the imposing walls of Giza's castle, whispers persist of Templar-engineered passageways, their stone corridors winding like veins beneath the earth. These weren't just escape routes, they were subterranean highways for moving treasure under the noses of kings. At Dôme, where Templar knights were imprisoned after their arrest, locals speak of a hidden stairwell leading to a cavernous chamber. Scratch marks on the walls, some claim, match the dimensions of Templar treasure chests. But how plausible is it that a persecuted order could carve out such elaborate hideaways? The answer lies in their genius for turning faith into fortress. The Templars didn't dig haphazardly, they built like military architects. At Giza's castle in Normandy, ground-penetrating radar has revealed a tunnel network stretching over 200 meters, its walls reinforced with the same herringbone masonry found in Templar chapels. Historians note the tunnels intersect at precise right angles, a signature of their strategic planning. Even more telling, the system links the castle's treasury to a nearby riverbank perfect for smuggling. Similar designs appear beneath Rosslyn Chapel and the Commandery of Pains in Champagne, where tunnels branch like spokes from a central hub, a layout eerily similar to the Order's banking network above ground. But the crown jewel of Templar subterfuge might lie beneath the French town of Saint-Paul-de-Fenouillet. Here, a tunnel dubbed La Corne plunges into the bedrock, its walls etched with Templar crosses and alchemical symbols. In 1952, explorers found iron hooks embedded in the ceiling suggesting something heavy was once lowered into the depths, the tunnel's terminus. A natural cavern with ventilation shafts precisely aligned to celestial events, a feature seen in Templar-built sites from Jerusalem to Portugal. What's often overlooked is the sheer manpower required for such projects. The Templars didn't just command knights, they controlled thousands of lay brothers, stonemasons, blacksmiths, and miners bound by vows of silence. Records from the Paris Temple list payments to excavators for special subterranean works. Some scholars argue these laborers weren't just digging cellars, they were hollowing out a secret continent of vaults. Yet the most chilling detail isn't the tunnel's existence, it's their emptiness. Wherever these passages are uncovered, they're stripped bare, their walls scraped clean of anything resembling treasure. Whether the Templars reclaimed their hoard or it was looted centuries ago, one thing's certain: these tunnels weren't built to hide gold. They were built to move it, and if even half the legends are true, somewhere beneath Europe's oldest castles, the stones still remember the echo of armored boots and the weight of chests too heavy to name. In the shadowy world of Templar treasure hunters, few names spark as much debate as Graham Phillips, a British researcher who claims to have traced the order's lost fortune to a crumbling English chapel. His theory hinges on an obscure 15th century manuscript known as the Lambeth Roll, which allegedly points to the Templars hiding gold beneath the ruins of Staffordshire's Temple Herdwijk. Phillips isn't just chasing whispers, he's armed with ground-penetrating radar scans showing anomalies beneath the chapel floor, voids that match the dimensions of Templar vaults found in Cyprus. Yet what makes his quest controversial isn't the technology, it's the audacity of his endgame. He believes the treasure isn't just gold, but sacred relics, including a silver casket rumored to hold fragments of the true cross. Skeptics scoff, pointing out the lack of definitive proof, but Phillips' persistence has turned a forgotten ruin into a pilgrimage site for modern-day treasure seekers. Then there's Kathleen McGowan Coppens, whose approach blends historical detective work with high-stakes intuition. Her focus, the labyrinthine caves of the Languedoc, where she claims Templar survivors stashed not just wealth, but explosive documents, papal decrees, and land grants that could rewrite medieval history. Coppens' most compelling find came in 2015, when her team uncovered a sealed alcove near Rennes-le-Château containing a lead tube. Inside, a parchment fragment bore Templar symbols and a single phrase in Occitan: "Lo secret is aquae, the secret is here." Carbon dating placed the parchment in the early 14th century, aligning perfectly with the order's downfall. But like so much in Templar lore, the discovery spiraled into controversy. Critics argue the phrase is too vague, the tube's provenance murky. Yet Coppens insists it's a waypoint in a larger puzzle, one leading to a royal worthy hoard hidden beneath the Pyrenees. What sets these modern hunters apart isn't just their theories, it's their methods. Phillips relies on cutting-edge tech, Coppens on linguistic and symbolic analysis. Then there's the late Tim Wallace Murphy, who took a radical third path, tracking the treasure through bloodlines. His research suggested Templar wealth wasn't buried at all, but transferred to noble families like the Sinclairs, who funneled it into Renaissance ventures. Wallace Murphy's work, though less flashy than ground scans or cave excavations, offers a sobering counterpoint. Maybe the lost treasure was never lost, just repurposed. The wildest claims, though, come from the fringes. Figures like Scott Wolter, host of America Unearthed, argued Templar gold funded early American colonies, pointing to the infamous money pit and its alleged ties to Henry Sinclair. Others, like French author Robert Charroux, swore the treasure was hidden in plain sight, encoded in cathedral architecture, or even smuggled into the Vatican's vaults. These theories often stretch credibility, but they share a common thread: the conviction that the Templars outsmarted their persecutors, turning their downfall into history's greatest sleight of hand. What unites all these seekers, from the methodical to the mystical, is the same hunger that drove the Templars themselves, the belief that some truths are worth chasing, even if they vanish like mist when you reach for them. Because the real treasure might not lie in chests of gold, but in the stories we refuse to let die, the ones that keep us digging, decoding, and daring to ask, what if? The Knights Templar didn't just invent banking, they birthed conspiracy theories that still haunt our financial systems today. Fast forward 700 years, and you'll find whispers linking their shadowy legacy to modern institutions like the Federal Reserve and the International Monetary Fund. Some theorists insist these organizations are mere extensions of Templar financial mastery, repackaged for the digital age. The logic: just as the medieval knights controlled Europe's wealth through secrecy and centralized vaults, today's central banks operate behind layers of opacity, pulling strings in ways the average person can't fathom. But how much of this is rooted in history and how much is pure myth? Take the Federal Reserve, America's most controversial financial institution. Critics love to point out its quasi-private structure, a network of banks operating with government oversight but not direct control. Sound familiar? The Templars, too, existed in a gray zone, answering to the Pope yet functioning like a sovereign entity. Some even trace the Fed's birth in 1913 to an eerily clandestine meeting on Jekyll Island, where powerful bankers allegedly designed the system in secret. The parallels are seductive: a small group of elites meeting behind closed doors, reshaping the flow of money. But here's where the theory frays: unlike the Templars, whose vaults held tangible gold, modern central banks deal in abstract trust currencies unbacked by precious metals, their value tied to belief as much as economics. Then there's the International Monetary Fund, often painted as a global enforcer of Templar-style financial discipline. Conspiracists highlight how the IMF loans money to nations with strings-attached austerity measures, market reforms echoing the way medieval kings begged Templar loans only to find themselves shackled by debt. The Order's infamous promissory notes, precursors to modern checks, somehow morph in these tales into today's special drawing rights, the IMF's shadowy reserve currency. But dig deeper and the comparison collapses. The Templars were disruptors, breaking feudal monopolies on wealth. The IMF, by contrast, is a pillar of the establishment, designed to stabilize, not overthrow. What fuels these myths isn't just faulty history, it's our lingering distrust of centralized power. The Templars mastered the art of moving wealth invisibly, and in a world where trillions shift digitally at the push of a button, that idea feels uncomfortably relevant. Even the symbols get twisted. The all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. Some claim it's a Templar relic, though it actually stems from Renaissance iconography. The Fed's ornate headquarters, with their vaulted ceilings and guarded corridors, just bureaucratic architecture unless you're primed to see echoes of Temple Church. The truth is, Templar banking was revolutionary because it was transparent for its time. Deposits were recorded, loans honored, and their system thrived on trust. Modern finance, with its derivatives and dark pools, is far more convoluted. If anything, the real conspiracy is how we've let nostalgia for knightly secrecy obscure a simpler fact. Money has always been a story, and the Templars were just early drafters of a tale we're still rewriting. Whether their ghost lurks in a Swiss bank or a Washington boardroom matters less than the real question: who controls the narrative now. Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code didn't just sell millions of copies, it rewired how the world sees the Templars overnight. Suddenly, these medieval bankers became the keepers of Christianity's darkest secret, their treasure not gold but a bloodline that could topple the church. The book's explosive premise that the Templars guarded proof of Christ's marriage to Mary Magdalene was fiction, but it tapped into a deeper truth. We've always suspected these knights knew something explosive. Brown's genius was turning their financial secrecy into something sexier, a conspiracy of holy blood and hidden heirs. Hollywood ran with it, blending Templar history with Gnostic gospels and Renaissance art until the lines blurred beyond recognition. But here's the twist: the real Templars were arguably more radical. Their power didn't come from guarding a royal bloodline, it came from inventing a system where money, not birthright, ruled the world. Video games took the myth-making even further. Assassin's Creed spun the Templars into an ancient cabal pulling humanity's strings across centuries. Their treasure not chests of coins but control itself, mind-altering artifacts, precursor technology, even the Apple of Eden. The games brilliantly hijacked the Order's penchant for secrecy, turning their historical banking networks into shadowy cells manipulating wars and economies. It's a seductive idea. What if their vaults held not gold but the blueprints for domination? Yet the irony is delicious. The real Templars were disruptors, undermining feudal power structures by letting merchants and kings alike borrow their way past old hierarchies. The game's Templars are feudal overlords. History's Templars helped kill feudalism. Even blockbuster films like National Treasure couldn't resist the allure. Here, the Templar treasure is the ultimate MacGuffin, a war chest hidden by America's founding fathers, its clues woven into dollar bills and Liberty Bell cracks. It's pure fantasy, but it echoes a real obsession, the idea that the Templars left a trail of breadcrumbs across continents, waiting for the right seeker to connect the dots. Never mind that Freemasonry's ties to the Order are tenuous at best. The image of Nicolas Cage unraveling a nightly conspiracy feels truer than truth because it feels like how history should work. Mysterious symbols, check. Ancient ciphers, check. A treasure too big for any one man to claim, double check. The strangest part, pop culture's Templars often overshadow the real ones. Ask a random person about the Order, and they'll cite the Da Vinci Code before the Chinon Parchment. But this isn't just distortion, it's evolution. The Templars have become a blank canvas, their white mantles a screen onto which we project our own obsessions, with conspiracies, with lost wisdom, with the idea that history has a secret layer only the worthy can access. Maybe that's their ultimate legacy, not a hoard of gold, but a story so potent it refuses to die no matter how many times scholars cry foul. After all, the best treasures aren't found in the ground. They're the ones we keep inventing. Modern treasure hunters no longer rely on shovels and intuition alone. Science is now cracking open the Templar mystery with tools those medieval knights could never have imagined. Ground-penetrating radar has transformed archaeology, revealing hidden chambers beneath centuries-old stones without lifting a single rock. At Temple Church in London, scans unveiled anomalies beneath the chapter house, rectangular voids matching descriptions of Templar treasury vaults found in Cyprus. Similar surveys at Toma in Portugal detected a labyrinth of tunnels radiating from the Order of Christ's fortress, their precise angles suggesting deliberate engineering rather than natural formations. But the most startling discovery came at Dom Prison, where radar pulses echoed back from a cavern 30 meters underground, its dimensions aligning perfectly with Templar architectural ratios. The kicker, local legends insist this was the last stop for gold smuggled out of Paris before the arrests. Forensic accountants are tackling the mystery from another angle, following the money through crumbling ledgers and royal audit records. When King Philip's men seized Templar properties, they meticulously documented every spoon and candle stub, yet their inventories show a glaring discrepancy. The Paris Temple alone should have held over 100,000 livres in liquid assets based on loan records, but only 15,000 were recovered. A team from the University of Geneva recently reconstructed the Order's financial flows using AI, cross-referencing thousands of transactions from notarial archives. Their findings, in the 6 months before the arrests, massive sums were quietly converted into untraceable assets, bearer bonds, rare silks, even barrels of mercury, a substance the Templars allegedly used in alchemical experiments. The paper trail evaporates at coastal commanderies like La Rochelle, where customs logs note special cargoes shipped without standard tariffs, a red flag for valuables in transit. Some of the most compelling evidence comes from an unlikely source, tree rings. Dendrochronology studies at Templar-built sites in France show sudden surges in timber imports around 1305, 2 years before the crackdown. The wood was used not for construction, but for crates and reinforcement beams in underground chambers. Even more telling, samples from Rennes-le-Château's church renovations match Baltic oak felled during winters, a wood prized for its resistance to moisture. Perfect for safeguarding metal and parchment in damp crypts, yet for all our technology, the Templars' financial sleight of hand still outwits us. Their double-entry bookkeeping system, centuries ahead of its time, included deliberate errors that may have been code. A ledger from the Carcassonne Commandery lists payments to the gardener with no explanation, a phrase later found repeated in Scottish Templar trial records. Was this a covert paymaster, a metaphor for relocating assets? The truth might literally be buried in the numbers. Modern cryptographers have run these texts through decryption algorithms designed for medieval ciphers, uncovering recurring numeric patterns that could point to coordinates. Or might just be tax evasion on an epic scale. What these scientific pursuits reveal isn't just the scale of the missing wealth, it's the sophistication behind its disappearance. The Templars didn't just hide treasure, they weaponized bureaucracy, turning quills and parchment into tools of invisibility. Their real vault wasn't made of stone. It was made of silence. The legend of the Templar treasure isn't just about gold, it's about defiance. For 700 years, their vanished fortune has symbolized something far more potent, the power of the powerless to outsmart kings, popes, and empires. When Jacques de Molay burned at the stake cursing his persecutors, he didn't just leave behind a mystery. He ignited a myth of resistance that would echo through revolutions, secret societies, and even modern-day uprisings. Take Freemasonry, which emerged centuries later draped in Templar imagery. Their rituals borrow heavily from knightly lore, the aprons mimicking Templar mantles, the obsession with geometry mirroring the order's architectural codes. Why? Because the Masons saw themselves as spiritual heirs to the Templars' greatest act of rebellion, slipping through the fingers of tyranny. When 18th-century Masonic lodges plotted against monarchies, they weren't just fighting for democracy, they were channeling the ultimate underdog story. Even the Eye of Providence on the US dollar bill, often misinterpreted as a Masonic symbol, owes its mystique to this legacy. It's not about surveillance, it's about the watchful persistence of hidden knowledge against oppression. But the Templar myth didn't just inspire elites. During the French Revolution, rioters tore down statues of kings while singing songs about the martyred knights. Napoleon, ever the opportunist, later tried to co-opt their legacy, staging a fake Templar initiation in Malta to legitimize his imperial ambitions. Fast forward to World War II, and the French resistance named clandestine networks after Templar commanders, their underground presses echoing the Order's secret courier system. The message was clear: like the Knights, they'd outlast their persecutors through cunning and secrecy. Today, the symbolism thrives in unexpected corners. Occupy Wall Street protesters in 2011 brandished banners with Templar crosses, framing bankers as modern-day Philip IV's hoarding stolen wealth. Cryptocurrency enthusiasts tout blockchain as the new Templar banking, a decentralized system to evade government control, just as the Knights once sidestepped feudal lords. Even hacker groups like Anonymous borrow Templar-esque tactics, masking identities while dismantling corrupt systems from the shadows. What makes this legacy endure isn't just romance, it's adaptability. The Templars' real treasure wasn't their gold, it was the blueprint they left for resisting absolute power. Their story teaches that when institutions grow corrupt, the marginalized can still win, not through brute force but by rewriting the rules. Whether it's Masons crafting constitutions or activists encrypting dissent, the pattern repeats. The underdog learns, evolves, and ultimately outlasts. So the next time you hear a conspiracy theorist rant about hidden Templar gold, remember they're missing the point. The Knights didn't just bury treasure. They buried an idea, and ideas, unlike chests of coins, can never truly be seized. So where does the truth lie in this 7-century-old treasure hunt? The most grounded theories suggest the Templars smuggled their wealth to Scotland, Portugal, or deep underground, scattering it through tunnels and trusted allies before King Philip's men could seize it. The Scotland connection holds weight, with Rosslyn Chapel's cryptic carvings and the Sinclair family's well-documented ties to surviving knights. Portugal's sudden rise as a naval power under the Templar successor Order of Christ feels too convenient to ignore. And those empty vaults beneath European commanderies, they hint at an operation too disciplined to leave wealth sitting idle when the noose tightened. But the wilder possibilities are what keep this mystery alive. Could they really have crossed the Atlantic decades before Columbus, burying relics in places like Oak Island? Did their treasure include forbidden knowledge, lost gospels, alchemical secrets, or proof of a history the Church couldn't acknowledge? The beauty is, we'll never know for sure. And maybe that's the point. The Templars mastered the art of keeping people guessing, turning their legacy into a puzzle that refuses to be solved. Here's where you come in. This story isn't confined to history books, it's etched into the landscape. Maybe there's a Templar chapel in your region, its carvings hiding messages. Perhaps your local museum holds artifacts labeled medieval that don't quite fit the timeline. Even family names can be clues. Surnames like Sinclair, St. Clair, or Molay might trace back to Templar descendants. The real treasure hunt isn't just about gold, it's about connection. So what's your theory? Share it below. Because the greatest secret of the Templars isn't what they hid, it's how they made us all keep looking. And as long as someone's still searching, their story isn't over. It's just waiting for the next chapter.